Let's talk about something that might sound a little strange at first: a forest or a river, having a hidden value on a company's balance sheet. Well, forever, that value has basically been invisible, zero. But that's all changing, and it's changing fast. Today, we're going to unpack how the financial world is finally learning to account for nature, and honestly, why it's one of the biggest shifts happening in business right now. So let's just jump right in with that big question. How much is a forest actually worth? I mean, we all know they're beautiful, they're priceless in that sense, but financially, on paper, they've pretty much always been valued at nothing. The thing is, for a business, that forest could be, well, everything. It might be preventing floods that would wipe out a factory. That river might be providing clean water that's essential for manufacturing. This value is absolutely real, but you'd never see it on a balance sheet. It's a hidden asset right up until the moment it's gone. And when it disappears, that's when it creates very real, very painful financial risk. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to dig into these hidden financial risks tied to nature. Then I'll introduce you to the new global framework for managing them. It's called the TNFD. We'll walk through its awesome four-step process, the LEAP approach. And then we'll see how all of this can actually turn risk into a huge opportunity. All right, first things first. Let's really get a handle on this core problem: nature's hidden financial risk. I mean, why is this suddenly on every CEO's radar? So, just to make sure we're all starting from the same place, when we say nature in this conversation, we're not just talking about pretty trees and animals. We're talking about the whole shebang, the entire complex system of living things, and that includes us, people, and all the ways we interact with our environment. It's the whole web of life. And here's the really crucial part. Our economies are completely tangled up in this web. We depend on what experts call ecosystem services. Things like bees pollinating our crops, wetlands filtering our water for free, or forests acting as a natural barrier against floods. For so long, we've just taken these for granted. But as we damage these natural systems, we start to break those services. And that directly creates massive financial risks for businesses and even whole economies. So you've got this huge, growing risk that nobody was really managing. The financial world needed a plan. And that, right there, is where the TNFD comes into the picture. The Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, or TNFD for short, basically created a global playbook. It's a framework to help companies and organizations finally see, understand, and deal with all their nature-related issues. The best way to think about it? It's like they're creating a set of accounting rules, but for nature. It's designed to make that invisible value visible. Now, a framework is great in theory, but how does a company actually do any of this stuff? Well, the TNFD has an answer for that too, and it's a clear, actionable process called the LEAP approach. LEAP, it's an acronym, of course. It stands for Locate, Evaluate, Assess, and Prepare. This is really the heart of the TNFD. It's the practical, step-by-step guide that takes a company from, where do we even begin, all the way to having a solid strategy and a clear report to show for it. So let's break this down, starting with the first two phases: locate and evaluate. You can think of this whole part as the discovery mission. So, step one is to locate. This is so important because unlike carbon emissions, which are a global issue, nature-related risks are intensely local. A water shortage in one part of the world is a totally different problem than deforestation somewhere else. So this phase is all about mapping. A company literally has to figure out exactly where its factories, its farms, its suppliers, its entire operation physically touches the natural world. And this is where it gets really cool and tangible. Take a look at this. It's a real-world deforestation risk map. A company can just overlay its own supply chain data right on top of this map. Instantly, they can see their sensitive locations, the exact hotspots where their business crosses paths with high-risk areas. This is the moment that invisible risk starts to pop into full view. Okay, once you know where you're connected to nature, the next step is to evaluate how. And this is really about looking at two sides of the same coin. First, your dependencies. What does your business absolutely need from nature just to operate? Could be clean water for a plant, fertile soil for your crops. Then you flip the coin and look at your impacts. What is your business doing to nature? Maybe it's the pollution from that same plant or the land you're clearing. You have to understand both to get the full picture. So after all that discovery work, locating and evaluating, we move into the final two phases: assess and prepare. This is where you turn all that information into analysis and, most importantly, into action. In the assess phase, you start translating everything into real financial risks. They usually fall into two big buckets. First, you have physical risks. These are the direct hits you take when nature degrades. Think of a sudden acute risk, like a flood that shuts down your main shipping route, or a slow chronic risk, like your crop yields getting smaller every year because the soil quality is declining. Then you've got transition risks. These pop up when society starts reacting to nature loss, like new laws that ban deforestation, or a sudden change in what customers want, with everyone demanding sustainable products. Both of these can seriously hurt the bottom line. And that brings us to the final step, prepare. This is where the rubber meets the road. It's not enough to just make a list of all the scary risks. This phase is all about building an actual strategy to deal with them, and, just as important, to spot the opportunities that are hiding in all this. A really powerful tool here is something called the mitigation hierarchy. It's basically a priority list, a strategic path. First and foremost, you try to avoid causing any negative impact in the first place. If you just can't do that, then you work to minimize the impact as much as possible. After that, you actively work to restore what's been damaged. And the ultimate goal, the big one, is to completely transform your business model so it's sustainable from the ground up. And that brings us to a really crucial shift in thinking. Because while this whole LEAP approach starts by looking at risk, where it ends up pointing is toward opportunity and creating new value. There's this quote from the TNFD itself that just nails it. Harming nature is, when you think about it, just damaging your own foundation. But the opposite is also true. When you invest in nature, you can actually secure and even improve those services you depend on, which in the end builds a much stronger, more resilient, and more valuable business. This all leads to this big, ambitious goal, becoming nature positive. Now, this isn't about just doing less bad stuff or getting to net zero damage. This is a goal to actually leave nature better off than you found it, to actively help it recover and become more resilient. So, what does that really mean in the real world? When you strip it all down, what does a nature-positive business actually look like? Well, it's a business that's way more resilient to shocks like droughts or floods. It's more innovative because it's finding new ways to work with nature, not against it. And it's more transparent, which earns trust from customers, from investors, from everyone. Simply put, it's a business that has figured out how to turn what used to be a huge, hidden risk into a powerful strategic opportunity for its future. And that's our look at the TNFD and its LEAP approach. If you found this useful, and if you're curious about the other big ideas shaping our world, make sure you like, share, and subscribe for more. Thanks for tuning in.